Coming up on The Returned.
I was working on a puzzle and I heard a voice say, "You're going to die." And I'm looking around the room thinking there's no one here. Who said that? And suddenly I was rising off the bed and I was about shoulder height with the two nurses who are on each side of my bed. And I looked at both of them like, "You're seeing this, right?"
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. The truth always follows you back. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and lightworkers from around the world. Oh, I'm so excited to have this conversation today. And I know I always say this, but I have been waiting for this one. I had a conversation with our guest last week on the phone, and since then, I have been seriously counting the days. I am honored to be sitting here with Heather Vandermeyden, an NDE survivor and an author whose remarkable journey through suffering, surrender, and spiritual awakening began when she was just 20 years old. Heather experienced dozens, yes, I said dozens, of near-death experiences, and I can't wait to get into it. Heather, welcome to The Returned.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here today.
I'm so excited you're here. Thank you for being here. Heather, before we dive into your extraordinary experiences, I have spent some time listening to your story. Would you give us a brief understanding of the woman you were before it all unfolded?
For sure. So I grew up really healthy, great family, and about 18, I got married. And I'd only been married a really short time, like maybe 6 months, and I started getting sick. And I was going to doctors saying, "What's wrong with me?" And no one could help me. I felt like I had the stomach flu all the time. And so about a year in, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease. Basically, inflammation attacks your body, especially your large intestine. And
Mm.
I got really sick really fast, and I was in complete denial. I didn't think I was sick, and I kept thinking I'll get better soon, but it continued to progress to where I was on large doses of steroids. I was on leukemia medications that were trying to put me into remission. I had to quit my job. I was really sick, and I was losing a lot of weight. I was down to about 94 pounds. And still, I thought I was fine. I thought I will wake up one day and I will be back to normal. I've always been healthy. And so I didn't understand the gravity of what I was going through, but I was really sick. One day I was sitting at my parents' house. We'd been visiting, and I was at the kitchen table by myself. There was no one else in the room. And I was working on a puzzle, and I heard a voice say, "You're going to die, but you're going to be okay." And I'm looking around the room thinking, there's no one here. Who said that? It was a male voice. And as I thought about it for a few minutes, I thought, this voice, it seems very calming, and I don't know who it is, but I feel like I can trust this voice. And so my next thought is, well, I guess I'm going to die. I should probably prepare for that. And I'm thinking, how am I going to die? I'm obviously not going to die from being sick because I'm not sick. Still in denial.
Yes.
And so I figured it would be a car accident. And so I started to kind of prepare in my mind how I was going to get ready in case I did pass away, how my family would take the news. And I was at peace with it. And before this point, I was really, really afraid to die. The thought of it scared me. And I didn't want to go there. But this, I kind of thought, okay, I've got to kind of prepare, but I need to live my life anyways, just in case. And so over the next few months, I was in and out of the hospital quite a bit with collapsed lungs. I was passing out and falling down the stairs. The collapsed lungs I had for like a week before I realized that it probably was not a backache. I have a really high pain tolerance level. And so I finally went to the hospital and they admitted me and fixed me up, sent me home. And I was meeting with specialists and they were saying, if you can't get your body into remission, we're going to have to do surgery and remove your entire large intestine. And I was like, nope, not going to happen. I'm 20 years old, never had surgery. That terrified me. It was a really hardcore surgery anyways. It would be either a 2 or 3 series surgery. They remove your large intestine. I'd have a colostomy bag while my stomach healed. And then eventually they would take my large intestine and make a loop at the bottom. Basically, that would be my large intestine. And I thought, no, no, thank you. Not going to do it. I'm going to get better. Unfortunately, I did not get better. And by December of 1999, I was 20 years old, and I had been in and out of the hospital with high fevers, 104, 105. And I went in on December 20th, and the ER doctor looked at me and he said, "We're going to keep you." The entire time I was there, I was saying, "No, I just have a fever. I'm fine." I was 94 pounds. I was having such high fevers. I was changing my clothes like 5 times a day. You bring them out, they're so wet. I mean, I was really a mess, but I truly didn't understand the gravity of the situation because I was so young and I'd always been healthy. So he admitted me to the hospital against my pleas for letting me go home, and it saved my life in the end. Once I was admitted, they performed a bunch of tests and said, "You have about 24 hours to live. We need to remove your large intestine immediately." I was like, "No, I'm good. I have a family Christmas party I need to go to in a couple days. Let me go to that, and then we'll talk again." And my doctor is like, "No, let me talk to your family." So he brought my husband and my parents in, and they said, "Yeah, she obviously needs surgery. I was so sick." And everyone around me could see it, but me. I was so used to being sick and being in pain and not being able to eat that I was very malnourished. I think that it kind of affected my ability to understand how sick I was. So they brought me into surgery, and I remember going through the doors of the surgery unit and thinking, okay, this is how I die, I guess. And went into anesthesia and came out. And I remember coming back into the recovery ward, waking up and thinking, okay, I didn't die. Wow. But being so upset that here I now have a colostomy bag. I'm 20 years old. I feel like my life is over, but I had to live, I guess. So I was in the hospital, and this was December 23rd, they did that surgery. On New Year's Eve of 1999, Y2K, I was still in the hospital, and the nurses came in to check on me. And I had family there because we were afraid that the machines were going to shut down when, the clock struck midnight. It was the year 2000. The nurses came in and they were checking on me. And suddenly I felt what felt like my body lifting off the bed. I was laying down, but it felt like I was rising off the bed. And I was about shoulder height with the 2 nurses who were on each side of my bed. And I looked at both of them like, "You're seeing this, right?" And no one said anything. They just kept checking my vitals and checking my 8-inch incision on my stomach. And I was like, this is very weird. No one is noticing that I am floating on the bed. So I kept quiet. And I was not under any narcotic use at that time. I hated the feeling of the morphine, so I wouldn't use it. So I was fully lucid. So after they left my body, I felt like it was slowly moving down onto my bed again. And I just kept quiet. I thought, this is concerning. I don't know what happened, but it scared me. So nothing like that happened again the rest of the night. And I just went on with recovery. A couple of days later, on the 3rd, my small intestine came out of my stomach and was in my colostomy bag. And so they rushed me back in for emergency surgery, cleaned me up, brought me back. And then a week later, it happened again. So this is my 3rd major surgery in a very short time. And I became very, very critical, incredibly fast. Once they brought me back from that surgery, my lungs started filling with fluid. It's called acute respiratory distress syndrome. And I was suffocating to death. I had sepsis throughout my entire body. Intra-abdominal sepsis is what it's called. I developed diabetes. My liver was starting to shut down. I was incredibly critical. And they were trying to get my oxygen levels up. They were incredibly low. And I kept saying to them, I don't want to be intubated. Let me breathe. So I'm trying to hold my chest like this and make my breathing slow down. And I can feel the chaos happening around me, and I'm terrified. And my mom's next to me in the bed, sitting next to me, and I'm saying, help me, help me. It was just the most scary experience because I could not breathe on my own. So they asked my parents to leave the room, and they went in the hallway. My in-laws were there as well. And suddenly I was rushing down the hall. I was on a bed. The nurses, all the critical care unit was with me. And my family thought I had died. I was that sick. And so they asked the nurses station. They said, no, they're just trying to get her stabilized. And this is a point where I left my body. And I am suddenly sitting in this room, and off to my right side is a nurse's station. And I can see some nurses working. They've got their computers. They're very involved in what they're doing. They're not noticing me. They're writing notes for the patients. And I watched them for a minute and thought, okay, they're busy. That's why they're not acknowledging me. And then I looked off to my left, and there was a hospital bed, and there were nurses all around the bed covering the patient. But as they'd moved back and forth, they were kind of all moving at a fast rate. And I could tell that whoever was on the bed was pretty critical, and they were trying to help her. And at one point they moved, and I could see a young girl, and she was labored in her breathing. She looked panicked, and I thought, that poor girl, I feel so sad for her. She doesn't look good, and I'm sure she's scared. But I didn't think anything more of it. It was almost like watching a movie, and you think, oh, that poor person, but you don't know who this person is. You don't have any understanding of who they are, and so there's no connection. It doesn't bother you so much. After a few minutes of watching, I realized I could understand what the nurses were thinking. And then it hit me, that girl, who I could also feel her fears, was me. I had no connection to her at all. And it was just shocking to know that that was me, because it didn't feel like me. It felt like an empty shell. And I could, where I was fully me. I was enveloped in this love that was so immense. I was just cocooned in this peaceful feeling of energy that I had never experienced before. There was no pain. And that was really fun to notice, because I had been in intense pain. They couldn't close my stomach because my skin kept shredding. And so they were packing it with gauze. And every day I'd have to get up and walk because blood clots. They didn't want me to get blood clots. And every time I would, it would tear the scar more so. So I was pretty much in pain 24/7. So noticing that I was not, and feeling that love was just incredible. And I thought I could be here forever. And so I watched them work on the girl for a while. And then suddenly I opened my eyes and the room is black. I'm back in my body. I'm in immense pain. And I feel like my hands are tied down. And I'm thinking, what is going on? I'm trying to pull my hands up. I don't want to be tied down, obviously. And I can feel something in my mouth. It's almost like a thick plastic. And it's really bothering me. So I'm trying to pull it out. And I suddenly hear this man scream, Heather, put your hands down. Put your hands down. And it scares me. I fall back asleep. I'm still coming out of anesthesia. It happens a couple of times. And every time I forget that my hands are tied down. I found out later that I was actually trying to pull out the tube, and that's why they were tying my hands down. It was a really uncomfortable experience, and it scared me. And this was in the shock trauma unit, which is the very, very critical part of the hospital. And this nurse was incredibly abusive throughout my stay. And I was glad once he was no longer my nurse. I couldn't say anything for the longest time because I was intubated. And so I finally wrote on a piece of paper the word asshole, pointed at him. When my family was there, my best friend and my mom, because I couldn't explain to them how mean he was to me. He would drag me across the bed and open up bed sores. And then he'd say, if that didn't happen, right? Yeah, it was terrible. So it took me days to write that one simple word down because I was so sickly. But I had to tell someone how he was treating me, and that was the only thing I could write down. I couldn't write long sentences. I was very shaky.
That makes me sick to hear that.
Yeah, we talk about him a lot in the book. But he was the only bad nurse I had. The rest were amazing, and I developed great relationships with them because I was in the hospital for 3 months. So once my family found out, he was taken off the case, and I had great ones after. But throughout the next 3 weeks from that point on, I was very critical, and I left my body multiple times. It almost became a game in a way because I knew if I was out of my body, I wasn't in pain, and I could see my family that had passed on. So I left my body as much as I could just to get out of the pain itself, but to feel that love. And my family, they kind of knew what was happening. They didn't at first because I was intubated, and so they couldn't understand. But one day I was laying in the bed shortly after that experience, and I suddenly felt like my body skyrocketed, was my soul, just like as fast as could be into this dark tunnel, and I was moving at the speed of light. And it was terrifying. I've never moved so fast in my life. And It was dark, except for this man that was standing in front of me. Like, he was with me, traveling at the same speed, and he was dressed in a dark suit and a top hat, and he had dark brown, soulful eyes. Like, you could just, his eyes were beautiful. And he had a mustache and a kind of a beard. And I didn't know who he was, but I felt safe with him. But the fact that we were traveling so fast was terrifying. And so I would panic and I'd pop back into my body. And it was like the soul just slammed into my body. It would kind of knock me off the, up in the air like this. And it happened quite a few times over the next 3 days. And I quit sleeping. I didn't want to leave my body and go into this tunnel. And I couldn't talk to my nurses or parents or anyone because I was intubated. So after about the 3rd day, my nurses noticed that I wasn't sleeping and I was kind of agitated. And they gave me a shot of something to put me to sleep. And I stopped going to that tunnel. And so this happened in 2000. A couple of months ago, my cousin reached out to me and said, "Do you know who that man was?" And I said, "I don't. I'm not sure who he was." And she gave me the name of a family member that would be my great-great-grandfather and said, look him up, look up his story. And so my mom's really into genealogy, my family is, and she looked up the story of my great-great-grandfather, and there were 2 pictures. That's him. It took 25 years to find out who that person was. And I never met him in his life. Yeah. It was incredible to see his face and say that's him. I mean, yeah, it was really, he didn't have a top hat on the picture. And I was like, I wonder if I could Photoshop one on. But yeah, it was definitely him. And
wow.
The part that was interesting to me is that I didn't know him in this life because his daughter, my great-grandmother, even passed away before I'd been born. And this great-grandfather, he went to work one day and never came home. We don't know what happened to him. He disappeared. And so it's always been a mystery with the family of what happened to him. And he just shows up in a tunnel with me one day. So it shows me that was the first knowledge that we do have relatives on the other side that are still involved in our life. But it took 25 years to find out who he was. But it was really a neat experience to see that and know that he was involved with my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was cool. But as I got sicker and sicker, my fever went to about 107.5, and my organs were starting to shut down. My doctor, a different surgeon, I had multiple surgeons, told me I'd need a liver transplant because my liver levels were so off the chart. And I said to him, no, I don't need a transplant. I've been told I'm going to be fine and that my liver will heal. And he was like, oh, goodness. the disease is not something you just heal from. So I said, don't even schedule surgery for a transplant. It's not going to happen. And he's like, let's talk later. But my fever,
goodness, what he must have thought.
I'm sure I was pretty sarcastic with him. I was like, yep, I'm good. But as the fevers went higher, they stayed at like 107.5. And so they packed me in ice in my hospital bed. I was literally packed in ice. And washcloths, wet washcloths on me, fans trying to cool me down. And I was shaking to death. I was so cold. And I kept saying, I need a blanket. And they're like, we have to get these fevers down right away. And I was like delirious at this point, like a cold, but more feverish. And suddenly, boom, I was out of my body. And I was in front of this building that was very ancient looking. It reminds me of like Jerusalem or Greece, like an ancient building. Had a very tall door, probably 10 feet tall, with 2 pillars in the front of it. The roof was flat on top, and it was made of sandstone. It was really pretty. And I really love architecture. And so I was checking out the building like, this is cool looking. And I noticed that the roads were not paved. They were just dirt roads. And I felt a presence behind my right shoulder. And it was a male presence. I knew that. I wasn't sure who it was. And I thought to myself, I want to be in this building. It was like it was welcoming me and drawing me in and saying, come in. And so as soon as I thought that, I was in my entire soul just popped into the entrance of the building. I never went through the front door. And I still had my earthly thoughts. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And we're in the entrance for a minute. And then suddenly we're in this room and it's round. And it's got this amazing wood everywhere. And there's bookcases and shelves of books. And there's thousands. There's no roof that I can see, no ceiling, but there's just thousands and thousands of books. They're leather-bound books, and you can tell they're very ancient. There were scrolls that were tied with thin ribbon, and this person that was with me at the entrance opens the scrolls and shows me, and there's ancient writing in them, and I can read it. And it's blowing my mind. And I'm reading through the books, and I feel like there's a sense of urgency to hurry. I can take my time. But as I'm reading through them, I hear him say, basically, I can't take this knowledge with me. I can read it, but I'm going to forget what I read. And that's really sad to me now, because I think it was the Akashic Records. And I can't imagine the beautiful words in those books that I don't remember. And so I kind of look forward to when I can go back home and read those books again and see what's in there. Yeah. So once I read those books, I found myself in the entrance again of this building. There were people there. They were reading books and just studying. There were bookcases on the wall that they could grab books from and papers. And they were kind of just doing their own thing. They weren't paying attention to me. And so no one was talking to me. But I looked off to my right, and there was a podium, like if you were speaking at a conference. And there was a small desk attached to it with 2 legs. And I felt very drawn to it. I thought it was weird that it was there because there were no people around it. But I felt like I had to go to this podium. And as I thought that, I started floating over towards it. And again, my earthly mind is like, oh my gosh, I'm floating. This is so cool. But when I got to the podium, it started to move to the left, and I saw that there was an entrance of stairs that were leading to a lower level. And I started walking down there. And when I got to the bottom area, it was all water. There were waterfalls, ponds. There was a pool right in front of me, and everything was ancient sandstone. Nothing was modern. There was no electricity. There was no plumbing. And the only way it was lit was through all the windows in the top of the building, like of the ceiling near. And there was a mother with her 2 children splashing in the waterfall. And it was such a beautiful, peaceful place. And I thought, I need to be in this water. And so I got into the water, and I couldn't see the bottom. And I love water, but I am terrified of drowning. And so the fact that I felt okay to be in this water with no bottom that I can see still kind of shocks me to this day. But I just knew profoundly that this was ancient healing waters and that I needed to be in there. And the guide that was with me, I called my guide. He was with me through every single experience I had. He just sat down next to me on the ground, and I just splashed the water back and forth. I just kind of went like this with my fingers and moved it back and forth. And I was just in this state of just such blissful happiness. There was no pain again. I wasn't worried about how high my hospital bills were. All my earthly worries were gone. And when I was in my hospital room, I was constantly asking the doctors, how much is all this costing? You know, I was terrified. I have insurance, but I mean, it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know. But everything left. I didn't worry. And so I sat in the water for quite a while, and I knew that somehow this water was going to heal me. And I went there multiple times over the next few days, and it didn't immediately heal me, but it also, I think, strengthened my resolve to live. My body was so broken. I had a 4% chance to survive. And the doctors kept telling my mom when they go in for surgery, we don't know what we're doing, but we'll see when we get in there. And they were telling my family to get the burial stuff ready because I wasn't going to make it. It was a really scary time for my family. They were struggling to hold everything together. My mom, she worked nearby, and so she'd come in the morning before work and at lunch, then at night. And then my dad worked for the federal government, and he ended up taking FMLA and staying with me every day in the hospital. And then my husband, poor thing, he was 22. He was very not ready for something like this. He's trying to work and deal with a critically ill wife and deal with the household stuff. And I don't think he had the mental capacity to handle it as well. So everything kind of fell on my parents. And my best friend was there a lot. So I had a lot of support while I was there. And so it made it a lot easier. They took turns making sure that someone was always with me, so I was never alone. And multiple grandparents were there. I was never alone. But at one point, my aunt, Alice, who had passed away previously about a couple of years before, came into my room, and I saw her soul, and she said, do you want to go to my house? I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so
my goodness,
just pop into our living room, And it's completely the same as it's always been. And she's the cutest thing if you knew her. She was like less than 5 feet tall, probably like 4'11" or something, maybe smaller, just this little curly haired woman in polyester pants. She looked exactly the same, but she was healthy. And her husband was still alive and he was at the house and nothing had been changed. It was still 70s shag carpet, orange countertops, like bright orange with black speckles. Like everything was 70s. And I felt pretty comforted to be there because it was, it was home for me. I spent a lot of time there. And so I felt really peaceful to be there. And she suddenly shows me my uncle in the hallway. And she says, he's going to fall in the hallway and he's going to pass away from his injuries. There's not going to be anyone there to save him. And that really upset me because he was alone and he was older. And seeing him there, I could feel how scared he was. And I didn't know how to stop and save him. And so as soon as we saw the scene, I popped back into my room in my bed. And I wanted to tell my family, you need to go check on him. But I couldn't. I didn't have the ability to talk. I was still way too shaky to write anything down. And I had a little paper that had smiley faces and frowny faces and little words like happy, sad, different things. But there was not the one I needed to go check on Uncle Harry.
Yeah.
So after about 3 days, I was able to write his name down. And my grandpa went and checked on him. He lived across the street. And he came to the hospital afterwards because they could tell I was really upset. Like, I was very agitated. And he said, he's okay. I checked on him. You don't need to worry. And it calmed me, but also confused me because it had been so clear what I had seen that he was definitely not living when he fell. And 15 years later, I got a call from my mom that he had passed away in the hallway. He'd fallen in the exact same spot and passed from his injuries. And I thought, wow, that just shows me there's such a difference with time. There's no time on the other side.
Yeah.
And we're so, like, especially here, I'm very OCD on time. Like, if I'm told I need to be somewhere, I'm always 5 minutes early, But on the other side, there's no time. And so what seemed like an immediate thing to me was really 15 years later. So it gave me comfort to know that he was not alone when he passed. My aunt was there and he was able to be reunited with her and he passed away peacefully, pretty much. So it was interesting when that happened. It's kind of good to know that he was safe. So I was grateful for that. My husband's grandmother would come to the hospital pretty often and she was constantly saying, you need to live, you need to live. And she would sit and rub a part of my arm. It was the only thing that wasn't hooked up to life support machines. And I would think, I don't want to live. I want to die. I'm praying every day I'll die. And one day as she's rubbing my arm, I suddenly pop out of my body. I'm in this horse stable and there's 4 stables, 4 areas that hold the horses. And then there's an area in between that's open. So, 2 on each side. And there's horses there and I'm just petting the horses. And as I'm with the horses, I can see her in the hospital room telling me, you need to fight, you need to fight. And it made me really angry. And I thought, I don't want to fight. I don't want to be there. I want to leave my body. And I don't care what you guys think. I'm done. I'm tired. I hurt. And I love being on the other side. It's so peaceful. And so I'm petting the horses, nose area. And I see this rope on the ground and I pick it up and I just start pulling on it with both ends and screaming as loud as I can, letting all the anger out that I'd felt at my inability to do anything. I couldn't sit up on my own. Anything I needed, I had to have help. I was on a feeding tube. I couldn't eat normal food. I was just so done. And as I'm screaming, asking God to take me, I suddenly feel this peace throughout my entire body. And I knew that I was going to be okay. And I didn't have that anger anymore. As I screamed, it kind of released the anger that I felt. And when I went back to my body, I felt very much calmer. I wasn't mad when she'd say, you need to fight. I thought, I do need to fight. Obviously, if I'm going to make it, I need to fight. And I was trying, but it was one setback after another. Every day it was something new. Blood transfusions. I had multiple infections from sepsis. They'd rushed me in for surgery. At one point, they did surgery and it messed my body up to where my left side was paralyzed and I couldn't walk. So now I can't sit up, can't walk. My hair's falling out. I'm getting down to 79 pounds. So it was it was frustrating because I knew that when I was out of my body, I was healthy and I didn't have to deal with the trauma that was happening there. And the poor doctors, they really did not know how to help me, and they were honest about it. We don't know what to do with her. They were talking to other doctors all over. I had probably at all times 10 residents that would follow the doctor in when they do rounds because it was such a different case, and they were putting it in American medical journals and really trying to figure out how to help me. And I suddenly one day find myself out of my body again, and I'm up in the air this time, and I'm watching this field below me, and it's got grass that's just like, it's almost like the grass is waving like this back and forth. And it was so pretty, like it was alive. And there were some oak trees, but the wood of the trees just almost glittered and glowed in gold. And everything was alive. The sky was so bright and brilliant blue. And I was like, this is just so beautiful. And I looked down below, and there were 2 white tents that were set up. They were quite large. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna go check it out. So I've got my guide with me, he's always behind my right shoulder. And so slowly we kind of float towards this tent and go underneath it. And it's a medical lab type place. There's doctors in there. They've got these huge medical books. They've got their petri dishes. They're looking through these books and writing stuff down. And I can tell that they're trying to help someone. They're trying to find a diagnosis or something. And as I'm watching them, they don't see me. And I don't even think to communicate with them. I was just kind of watching from the side. And my guide says to me, they don't know how to help you. They can't help you. It's through the power of faith and prayer alone that you will survive. And I knew that was true. I knew that the power of prayer would help me. I had so many friends and family that were praying for me. They were doing big, huge prayer circles, prayer groups. Everyone was praying for me. And you don't need a religion to pray. And it was never about religion to me. But I just knew that all these people coming together with this love and belief that they needed to help me was what I needed. And it didn't need to revolve around religion. And to me, when they were saying these prayers, it's like these balls of light were just shooting up into the air. And it was just full of all their love and their desire to help the situation. And it's almost like I could see the angels up there grabbing these balls of light to try to answer these prayers. And not just for me, but for everybody. And what I've learned from that is that our prayers are not always answered. And a lot of times I think that frustrates people. They'll be like, why? I prayed. It should happen. I asked. And that's not always the case. And sometimes it's because something better is happening or because God knows what's happening ahead of time and we don't. Maybe there's a very strong reason for why those prayers weren't answered. There's another path we have to take. And sometimes it involves some really hard trauma, but there's a reason for it. And so that kind of helped me to understand a little bit better, not be so angry when my prayers weren't answered. Because here I am still kind of praying to die. It's not happening.
Oh my goodness.
And my family was too, So but I do think prayer is so important. And I think that we all are able to talk to God, Heavenly Father, Source, whatever you want to call him, Jesus. They are there to listen. At one point, as I was very critical, I still had the fevers. I found myself in this area. I was in the shock trauma unit at this point. And over the course of this 3-week period, I was in multiple different critical care units. And that's kind of how I timelined everything once I realized what happened. My bed was in different spots, in different places. But when this next experience happened, I was in the shock trauma unit and I found myself in a room and it was very tall and rectangular. There was a wooden door and there was a glass square cut out in the top of it you could see through. And there were two, like a man and a woman. They were older and they were cute. They looked like grandparents, kind of. And I went over to talk to them because they looked very welcoming. And they told me that they were angels and that they ministered to the patients in the hospital. And I was like, I want to go with, because it seemed amazing to me that there was actual help from the other side helping all these patients. And I'd gotten to know some of my hospital neighbors by this point because it was a small unit. It was the critical care unit. So the doors were open and stuff. And so my family would tell me what was going on with the other patients as they talked with their families. And so we went to different rooms of these patients. And they told me if the patient is supposed to survive, we will help heal them. And if they are not supposed to survive, then God will show up at the door. We'll see his face through the glass, and we will know that it's that time for that patient to pass on, and
Wow.
we will help bring that person home, but we'll also comfort the family. And there was a young teenager, less than 20, and he had been in a car accident, and he had all the same life support machines I did, ventilator and everything. He was pretty critical. And his mother, father, and younger brother were at the hospital sitting in chairs around his bed. And I saw God, and I knew him immediately. They didn't even have to tell me who he was. I remembered him. And it doesn't matter what form he would have taken. He could have come to me as a small child or
Mm-hmm.
anyone, and I would have known it was him. It was his essence that I knew from before. And I was just so grateful to have him there, to see him, to know that he knew me. There was no judgment. I didn't feel like I was being judged for anything I'd ever done. There was just this immense amount of love. And I knew that I'd been with him before I came to this life, and that I'd be with him after. And being in his presence was the most calming, beautiful experience. He had this like iridescent pearl colored hair, these vibrant blue eyes that were just, it's like you could look into the future or this past everywhere. His eyes were just amazing. And he had some facial hair, and his skin was almost pink in a way, like very soft. And he looked young, but he wasn't. I knew that he held all the knowledge in the world, but he also was so familiar to me. And I just was able to spend time with him. And that was one of the most amazing experiences, because it gave me that strength I needed to know that I was not alone. And I knew I wasn't. But here's this energy source that is capable of so much, and he's with me, helping me. And it was just this precious time to spend together. And so back in the room with that young boy, the man and the woman, the angels, put their hands on the shoulders of the family, and you could see the light going from the angels to the family through their, like it's almost went from their head through their arm to their hand. Their hand was on the shoulder of the person, and then that light just filled the person. They were holding their hands on their shoulder. And I stood in the doorway and watched. And I know the family had to feel that love. It was so evident to me that they were being just held up in this immense love. And their son did pass away, and these angels were able to take him back. He was not alone. And so I think it's important for people to know that they're not alone when they die. And I know that a lot of people feel that way. And it's not the case. You always have someone with you when you are taken back home. And so that experience, it was beautiful. And I'd asked the angels at one point why I was struggling so much, why I couldn't get better. And they told me that before this life, I had made a pact with my brother, if you will, and I was going to take on some of his trials in this life. And that's why I was struggling so much, because of those extra trials. And I would do it again in a second. I love my brother. And
Wow.
I was shown some things about that. And so I know that there was a reason for my struggles and my traumas. And at the time, it was very hard, but I'm grateful now for those experiences, because they made me stronger in who I am today. So that was a fun thing to understand finally. At one point, there was a little boy and a little girl that would come to the foot of the bed, and sometimes they'd bring an old man with them. And I'd tell my family, like I'd say to my mom, "Oh, the kids are here again," and she'd be like, "What kids?" And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, they're right there. Don't you see them?" She's like, "No, I don't see them." And I'd explain to her what they looked like. And she'd ask me, is the old man your grandpa? And I'd say, I don't know. I don't remember. But we didn't know who these kids were. And I have dark hair. My husband at the time was darker. He was Portuguese. And there was no way these blonde children were our kids in the future, because they didn't look anything like us. The boy had very, very, very curly blonde hair and hazel eyes, and the little girl had straight blonde hair and hazel eyes. And I didn't know who they were. And so they showed up for about a week, and then they just didn't show up one day. And I was like, okay, don't know who they are. Years later, after I healed, I did foster care with my husband, and those were 2 of the children. We fostered 25
Wow.
kids, and the day I met my son, it was really cold outside, and he had a hat on, and when I brought him home, I took his hat off, and all his curly hair fell out of his hat. He was 22 months old, and it was him. It was incredible. I couldn't believe that
Wow.
baby was back, and so for the next couple of years, I was looking for my daughter, thinking she's gotta be somewhere, and, there have been some really cool experiences surrounding adoption, and I had been told by my guide that my body would not support pregnancy, and that adoption would be the way that we grew our family, so it was very heaven-led, I think, but a couple of years
Oh,
later, I when I got a call for a baby, and it was my daughter, and as they grew up to about the ages they were in the hospital, it was just uncanny, but I knew
wow.
very immensely that these were my kids, and so I always joke with them, "Well, you're stuck with me." But, yeah, I'm very, very grateful for my kids. They
Amazing.
were meant to be mine, but I feel like I shared them with their birth family. I'm very grateful for their birth family as well, and for the sacrifices they made, and so they're still a part of our life, they're part of our family, and it's been a beautiful experience to get to know my children in this earthly form. So, that was just one of the cool things, but as I was in the hospital, I couldn't seem to heal. I kept thinking I need to probably just find a way to die. And at one point, I found myself in the entrance to heaven, but I call the entrance. There were no golden bridges or golden gates or anything, but there were thousands of souls, energy souls on each side of an entrance. And they were in these beige robes,
Mhm.
and their faces were lit. They were lit with energy. I couldn't tell who they were by their faces, but I knew their energy, and they were past relatives that had passed from generations, some that were never even on this earth with me that I knew before I'd been born.
Wow.
There were friends that had passed, and I knew all of them, and there were thousands, and they were so happy to see me, and I knew precisely that if I crossed a certain point, I could stay in heaven, and I was like, "I've got to do this." And so my guide was with me, and I thought to myself, "I'm gonna tell him I'm gonna go see my grandma in her garden." I'd been with my grandma and my great-grandpa quite a bit throughout these experiences, and so I thought, "That seems like a good excuse. He'll probably think it's true." So I said to me, "I'm just gonna go with my grandma, and I'll be back." But you talk telepathically on the other side.
Mhm.
There's no language needed, and so I'm communicating this with him, and he kind of laughs, and he said, "It's not your time, you have to go back." And I bounced back in my body as fast as I could, and I was devastated. I thought that was my one chance. I could have stayed if I would have gotten past that point, and I was very, very depressed about that and so sad. But after I had been there for a little bit, I thought to myself, "How funny are you? He knew your thoughts. He knew you were
That's what I
trying to
was
stay there."
thinking. Nice
And
try, though.
I know, and I actually laughed about it and thought, "Oh, he's probably like," when they paired me with Heather, he's like, "Oh, goodness." The girl. But I knew that that was my ticket that I had missed to get to the other side, and it was very, very sad for me. But the funny thing is I was still having experiences. I could still leave my body.
Wow.
My nurse at one point was trying to get me to walk, and so I was on a lot of machines, and so they'd sit me on the bed, and again, I couldn't sit up on my own, so my mom's there and my nurse, Brian, and he has me sitting so my legs are hanging off the side of the bed, and suddenly I am, like, out of my body. It happened so fast, and I'm behind them, just a few feet away, and the hallway that I'm in has these oval windows that just go like this, like, there's just window after window on both sides of the
Yeah.
hallway,
Mhm.
and there's bright light everywhere. It's just this vibrant, bright light, and I'm watching them from there, and I can see him. He's panicked. He has both his hands on my shoulders, holding me up like this, and then suddenly he's snapping his fingers in my face and saying, "Heather, Heather, come back, come back." And I'm thinking, not coming
Wow.
back." And my mom is, like, fully panicked too, but I thought, I don't care. I don't Nothing can make me go back. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of the constant feeling of not being myself, and started to feel like the hospital was my home. And that's when it really hit that
Yeah.
I may never go back home. I may never learn to
Mhm.
walk again. It was too much. So I watched for
Oh.
quite a few minutes as he's in full panic mode. And I hear my guide say, "You got to go back." I was like, oh. So I thought in my head, okay, I'll go back, but I'm going to pop out as soon as they're out of the room. Because I was able to kind of do that. And so when my dad would be in the room with me reading his books, I'd look over at him. I did this with my husband a couple of times too. I'd see that they weren't watching and I'd leave my body. And when I came back, my husband would say, it's like your body just jumped like that. And you'd be very disoriented. And we knew that you hadn't been
Weird.
with us. And so they were fully
Oh.
aware. But I popped back in my body this time and my nurse says to me, "We lost you there for a minute." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was thinking, you almost lost me completely. Because I still had my sarcastic sense of humor no matter what.
If they couldn't hear you.
Yeah. But I asked my mom about it a couple of years ago, and she told me the same thing from her point of view. And I was like, I'm sorry for everything you went through, because it was really traumatizing.
Yeah.
And even still,
Mhm.
when I talk about it, my mom, it's really hard for her to hear. And she's very
I
supportive,
bet.
but for her, her baby was
Mhm.
dying, and it was not a good
Yeah.
time. She didn't get that beautiful feeling of peace that I got. So it
Mhm.
was much harder for her than it was for me. But after a couple of weeks, they decided to remove the ventilator. It had been in long enough that they were worried about causing some issues. And so they wanted to see if I could breathe on my own. They didn't want me to become dependent on the breathing
Mhm.
machine. And so when they removed the ventilator, which was so
Mhm.
fantastically not fun, they say cough and then they pull this huge tube
Oh.
out. Not fun. I I realized I couldn't talk. I had lost the ability to talk. And they brought me this cup of ice with a pink sponge. If you've ever been to the hospital, you've seen them
Oh, yeah.
with the pebble ice. And they said, do not take a drink. Just, put it around your lips. Yeah. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I'm
Yeah.
going to eat all ice. But they were afraid of me aspirating again. So my mom's kind of, rubbing it around my mouth. And she moves out of the way for a minute. And I grab that stick and I've got little ice cubes on it. And I'm just like,
Oh,
trying to
man,
get
I
as
would
many
have
as I
too.
can. It was so good. And I kept thinking, I
Oh.
need to tell her how good this ice is, this water. Like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever drinking. And so I'm kind of showing her the cup like this. And she's like, yeah, it's water. But I couldn't explain to her, you've got to drink this water. It's amazing. And so we're sitting there in the room. The nurses are cleaning up, from the removal of the intubation, getting the machines out. And suddenly I look up at the wall in front of me, and it's just this entire wall of a waterfall and vegetation, like a jungle. Beautiful. And everything is alive, like the greens. There's so many layers of greens. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I have to tell my mom. I'm pointing to the wall, and she's like, okay, nice, it's a wall.
Oh.
And she was probably so confused. And I just don't have the ability to talk. I had to have a occupational therapist help me relearn to talk.
Mhm.
So I'm watching this waterfall, and suddenly I'm inside of this area of this lush vegetation. And I'm kind of
Mhm.
walking around thinking, oh, this is amazing. I could stay here forever. And, ever since the healing waters, I love water. So anytime there are my
Yeah.
NDEs, I'm like, this is just incredible. But as I was walking, I came to this open field area, and there was a red barn. And I looked farther over, and there was a house. And it was like old, like a 1700s type house, like with
Mhm.
the rocks on the door, the thatched roof. And there was a pond
Oh,
with
wow.
the watermill in it. The buckets that go around with the water.
Oh, yeah.
And I went and sat down next to it. I was just listening to the water kind of go around. It was so peaceful, but everything there has life. And the music, oh my gosh, the music is just melodies that we can't even imagine and we don't have here. And I, again, kept trying to tell my mom about the music and my best friend. I had a radio in the room, and I'd point to it, and so they put on church music one day, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, this is not it. But I haven't been able to find that music here. I found
Oh, I bet.
stuff that's similar, but nothing like that.
Mhm.
But everything was so alive, and the colors were so vibrant, and the love was so intense. It's just, it's an amazing experience that we don't get here. but I also feel like we can't speed up our time to get there sooner because we have certain
No.
things we're supposed to do in this life and certain trials, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to get through those before we can return home. And it was really hard coming back into my body because I felt so broken. And after about 3 weeks, I started to finally heal. And that's when it stopped. I couldn't leave my body anymore. And I was trapped in this broken shell. And oh my gosh, I missed it. I missed that love of being out, of being able to be with my family. I'd seen my grandma, my great grandpa, my aunt in orbs. They were floating across my grandparents' backyard, and they looked so young and healthy. And my grandma at one point had told me, "You just need to eat. You'll be fine. You just need to eat." And it was more than that. I'm telling my family, "No, no, I'm good. Grandma said I just need to eat." And they were like, "Oh my goodness, child." But that's what it ended up being. Once I healed, I needed those nutrients because I was so
Yeah.
malnourished. And, being 79 pounds, I was a size 10, 12 in children's clothes. I
Oh
wasn't
my
getting the
gosh.
nutrients. Yeah, I'd been on a feeding tube for 3 months. And so when I went to start
Wow.
eating, my stomach had shrunk so severely that I could take like 2 bites and it felt like up into my ribs. It hurt everywhere. And I was trying to get used to having a colostomy bag. So it was a really hard transition. And then not being able to
Mm-hmm.
leave my body was just, it was a nightmare. So eventually I was moved to a trauma or to a transitional care unit where they do physical therapy 4 times a day. And they were trying to help me learn to walk again. And I couldn't even unscrew the jar of a juice bottle. I was really weak. And my stomach
Oh
is still
yeah.
open because it has to close on its
Mm-hmm.
own. And so I was there for a bit and a couple weeks. And my mom wrote a letter to the doctor and said, "Can we take her home? She's failing here." I was like so depressed because this was such a horrible
Mm-hmm.
part of the hospital that I had quit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd given up. I didn't want to
Yeah.
live. And I thought, I'm going to will myself to die. And so the doctor did allow my parents to take me back to their house. And my dad was still off from work and he took care of me. He took me to physical therapy
Oh.
multiple times per week. And my brothers would help take care of me. My husband would stop by, when he wasn't working. It was a good year and a half
Oh.
of learning to walk and talk again and gain the weight. My hair completely fell out, came back in really
Oh,
curly.
wow.
I didn't feel like myself. I felt like a monster in my body. I had this huge scar on my stomach. So after about a year and a half, I was pretty healed. But a couple months after I was released from the hospital, I did go back in and have a couple more surgeries, and they were able to remove the colostomy bag and hook everything up internally, which was I was so grateful. I had a lot of problems with the colostomy
Mm-hmm.
bag. It was really hard on
Yeah.
my body. So I, of course, had problems during that, had to have multiple more surgeries, but I was healing. So I decided that it was time to move on with my life. It'd been a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And that's when we were going to do foster care. And so I knew I needed to do one more surgery. And that was to basically take the incision was very long, kind of like this, from my rib
Mm-hmm.
cage down, and it was full of scar tissue and a hernia. And so I found a doctor that would do outpatient surgery and had it brought down to like a C-section scar, went from hip to hip. Went in, had surgery, went home, and I went septic. My entire body
Oh,
filled with infection again. So I called the
oh
doctor and
my
said, I need to come
God.
back in and do surgery. I'd had this happen enough that I knew it wasn't my first rodeo. And
Oh
so
my
he
God.
said, come back in and we'll do emergency surgery and we'll get you taken care of. And so my mom said, can we have the local church bishop come out and give you a blessing first? And I said, okay. So 3 men came to the house, and I was at my house. So I had my husband and my mom there, and the men, and they gave me a blessing. And I was laying in my bed, and I had, the tubes for draining and stuff. I was pretty gross. But as they're giving this blessing, I start to feel my soul leave my body again. And it had been 2 years since I'd had
Oh.
this. And I thought, okay, I fulfilled whatever it is in this life. I can go home. I was so happy. And so I said to my mom, I'm leaving my body now. And she's crying. And I get about 5 feet off the bed. And I'm surrounded by that love again. There were thousands of angels in the room. And I was just so excited to go home. And then I heard the voice of my guide that said, this is the last time that you'll leave your body and you're going to heal from here. And I'd only been out for about 5 minutes, and slowly my soul went back into my body. And there was that sense of sadness. I was so
Yeah.
grateful for that moment to be able to leave again and feel that love and know that I was going to be okay. But I was also sad that I didn't get to leave permanently, because no matter how beautiful this life is, there's just something about the other side that you want to be there, enveloped in that love. So the men left, and we called the doctor and said, we're on our way. And suddenly, as I'm getting ready, I'm in the bathroom, grabbing my stuff I need. And my stomach splits open and infection just starts gushing out like a river. It's spilling all over the floor in the bathroom. I'm just staring at it going, oh my gosh. All the infection left my body. And as it's doing this, I feel from here, and it starts slowly moving down, my fever just leave my body. And when you're sick, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but when you're sick, your body just feels so weak and you feel woozy and you don't feel good. As it was leaving, I was healing. I could feel my body feeling better. And once all the infection left my body, I was like, I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. And so I called the doctor and I said, we're not going to come. And he said, well, you know your body. If you feel at all like you need to come, then call me and I'll meet you at the hospital. I had some really good doctors. I had probably 5 surgeons at this point.
Did you ever?
Yeah, I really did. So from that point on, I healed at a massively fast rate. I've never had to have any more surgeries. In fact, this was March 11th. By April 23rd, we had our first foster child the next month. And I was able to the healing was so amazing that I could just spend all my energy on this beautiful baby girl. And she was 14 months old and she'd been through a lot. And so I needed that strength to be able to take care of her and heal her. And that's what started our process with adoption and with open adoption and foster care. And I've been very involved in the foster care community since then. And what a blessing it is. And I know that a lot of times people don't believe in open adoption, but I'm such a proponent for it. And I think there needs to be a lot more loving understanding for the birth parents of children. A lot of times we're just angry because maybe there's drugs involved or something. We don't know the life they've had, and they chose a harder life to come to. And maybe that's because they needed that understanding or whatever their lessons were that they were learning, but they're still all God's children. And so I do have such a love for my kids' families because of the experiences that I've had. And so, my son's going to be 25 in a couple weeks. My daughter's 20. And it's been a ride. I'm very grateful. But about probably 2 years ago, I very randomly ran into the ER doctor that had saved my life by admitting me. It was in Arizona, and we came back to Utah. We were at an IANS conference, came back to Utah and had lunch, and I told him, for the first time, I told him almost the entire experience. And there's a couple we didn't talk about today, but I told him everything that I could while we're eating curry, Thai food, and not realizing that he was the doctor. And when I first talked to him at the conference, he said, your name sounds familiar, but I have a different name now, last name, than I did at the time because I'm divorced now. And so when I was going through my paperwork from the hospital, my medical records, I found the records from the day I was admitted, and he was my doctor. They admitted me.
Oh my goodness.
And so I told him, and he really did save my life. If he would have listened to me, I would not be here today. And the cool thing about this doctor is that he has had a lot of really cool experiences with patients in the ER, some that were passed away already. And so he's very open to this understanding. He's involved in IANS as well, obviously because of it. And so he was the perfect person to hear my experience, but to save me, really. My other doctors weren't so understanding. And when I told one of them that I died, he just shook like this and put his head down and wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't acknowledge anything that I'd said to him. And I know it's because there was some medical malpractice that happened that I'm sure he was worried about. But I'm very happy that this doctor could acknowledge what happened and was a really great experience to have him understand it. And he gave me a lot of insights that I didn't even realize at the time. So yeah, it's been an amazing
You're
experience.
wow.
Yeah, it took 25 years to talk about it. I never ever planned on talking
Wow.
about it in public, but here we are. So
I can't even. Wow. There's so much. I wrote 3
yeah,
pages of notes. I did. You are one sassy soul
I am.
is
Yeah,
what you are,
I have a sense of humor.
right?
It's kind of twisted.
Oh my goodness. They must have been just like, why won't she listen? But probably gave them a good hoot as well.
I'm
That is an
sure
incredible, your story is incredible.
it is. And I didn't appreciate it as much back then because I didn't understand it fully. It took years to
Of
understand.
course.
But I
Of
remember
course.
thinking that everyone that happened to had multiple experiences like that. And so I got every book I could at the library when I got out because I wanted to see the healing waters. I wanted to hear about that again. And I assumed that everyone's experience was the same. And they're not. They're all different, which I think is
Mm-mm.
amazing because they're tailor-made
Oh
to
yeah.
that person. Yeah.
Hmm. I had a few questions about that I wanted to go over with you. I'm almost thinking I better put my glasses on for this one because I wrote so many and I don't want to miss one. It's absolutely wow. So I really can't ever really see because I was writing as quick as I could. But let's go back to the beginning. Who was like, actually, I think I know who it was. The voice that says you're going to die.
I think it was my guide.
That's what I thought as
Yeah.
well.
And I look back now and there are experiences that happened before the hospitalization and a lot
Mm-hmm.
after. So he's been with me since birth. I just didn't understand fully. And we all have a guide.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
my gut said this, or, that's your guide. Yeah,
Right.
they're definitely there.
And why do you think that he told you?
I think because I was really terrified of what was happening to me, but I couldn't accept
Mm-hmm.
it. And I don't like surprises at all. And so I think he
Mm-hmm.
knew that. He was like, she's going to freak out if we don't give her a little bit of warning for that. But I
You
also wasn't
know,
taking my health
mm-hmm.
good enough. Like I knew I was sick, but I really thought, I'll take a Tylenol and I'll wake up tomorrow, I'll be fine. I was on like the heavy
Mm-hmm.
dutiest medications out there and it wasn't helping me. But in my mind, I was
Jeez.
fine. So yeah,
Isn't
he's
that
probably she's
something?
so stubborn.
You're very stubborn, but in a good way. I
Yeah.
actually going to skip ahead because while you were just talking about that, you explained something that I just felt through me. And that's when you were traveling through the tunnel. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like, I have been saying no tunnel for me. Like, I'm not kidding. I don't like roller coasters or anything
Yeah.
like that. So listening to you talk about that and the fear actually made me a little bit nervous. I'm like, oh gosh, please don't do this to me. I just don't want that, especially the speed and the whole, you don't even know what's happening really, right?
Yeah, I was so confused. But I mean, now that you say that, like my daughter's always like, we should go on a roller coaster. I'm like, I'm gonna hide in the bathroom. No, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I don't like the
I don't,
feeling
yeah, I don't like it.
of that. Like even to listening to you tell the story, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I don't know about that." And actually that is one of my prayers is for that never to happen to me and not to sneak up on me because I also do not like surprises. Like
Yeah.
I don't like them. It
Well, and
freaks me out even thinking of it.
yeah, me too. But I obviously could get to the other side without the tunnel, which they're probably like, if
Yeah.
we're gonna get her over there, we gotta do it a different way because she's freaking out. So yeah, there were different ways to get there, at least for
Yeah,
me.
right?
Yeah.
Like in that do you find that it was strange that you actually had that fear?
Um, Kind of
Like,
because I'm an adrenaline junkie. I mean, maybe more so
mm,
now. Like the scarier it is, the more I'm gonna do it because it's not gonna kill me.
mhm, mhm,
So yeah, I love high adventure type stuff, but I think that was just confusing. I was so young, and I wonder if I had the experience now with 25 years more of life lived, if I
mhm.
would understand it more. But at that point, it was so new to me that it didn't make sense. So,
I can't get over your experience.
yeah,
I really just
it's
can't get over
teaching.
how in-depth it was.
Yeah, and I don't know
Unbelievable.
why I was given that blessing, because a lot of people, they just pop out for a few minutes and they're back. But I'm very, very grateful for it. And even more so, I'm glad that my family was understanding and didn't try to ostracize me. But I think it's because they know who I
Yeah.
am. I'm not the type that comes up with
Yeah.
outlandish, weird stories. And so
Mm.
they were watching it unfold throughout. I mean, at one point, I ended up in the entrance to my house. My cats were at the top of the stairs, and my
Uh-huh.
husband was in bed. And I kind of floated down the hallway and checked on him. And I told him after, he had this baby blanket he always wrapped around his head, kind of. And I was like, "You had blue blanks on your head." So I could kind of tell him
My
what was going
goodness.
on. So I was able to kind of convey what was happening
You know,
on my side and make it, acknowledge it.
mm,
Yeah.
Heather, I'm just going to go off and I'm just going to ask, where do you think, like, when you came out of your body, where were you? Like, are we in another dimension? Are we just right here with everybody? Like, you can see, but we can't see you.
I
So
just had this
where do you
conversation the other
think
day.
we are?
Yeah, a friend and I, like, just yesterday had this conversation.
Hmm.
I think it's all around us, and we just don't have the same energetic level, like the same frequency to be able to see. And I could be wrong,
Hmm.
but like when I was watching the nurse try to revive me, I was right there. Every time I would be right just to the side kind of what was happening. And so I don't know. I think we are kind of surrounded by this amazing existence that we can't see because we aren't at the same frequency. Yeah. But I
That's
mean, I
what I
can't wait
think
until the day I
too.
pass and I can actually see the whole grand scheme and fully understand it.
You've seen a lot of it.
And
You really seen a
yeah,
lot of
I
it.
have. And I was told at one point that I was going to forget. They were going to help me forget some of the stuff that had happened. That was, I was not able to take that back with me. And I could see myself as they're telling me this. And I'm going like this, trying to grab this cranberry colored journal and a pen to write everything
Mm.
down that I was going to forget. And I don't know what I forgot. The stuff I saw was amazing. So I can't even imagine what it is that I
What you
forgot.
don't remember.
But I think, and this is just my belief, it was really, really hard to come back to my body. I was so broken. And I've had some
Yeah,
side effects from these surgeries. Obviously, you can't just like
I bet.
rebuild.
Mm.
And so I think if I would have seen more, I would have had more of a goal of getting back there, and it might have not been a healthy goal. And
Hmm.
so by losing those experiences, I realized I do have to live this life to its fullest. And
Yeah,
it really is a short life when you think about it.
I
And
think so.
in my mind, we don't die. We just step through one door into
Hmm.
another and we continue our life in a different energy. And so
Well, you
I'm not
kind of
afraid.
just proved that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not afraid of
Hmm.
dying anymore. And
Hmm.
I feel like I've been surrounded by death in this life. I've lost a lot of family and friends,
Yeah.
and it gives me a different perspective. I still am desperately sad when they pass away for us. But for them, oh my gosh, I'm like kind of jealous. Like they have this beautiful existence waiting them and just so many loved ones on the other side waiting for them. And so it kind of changes my perception of what they're going to. Like I'm not sad for them.
When I kind of feel the same way. And just your opinion, where do you think we actually go? And what I mean by that is, do you think that we actually go to a place that is like here, but better? Like, is it that real? Is it
Oh,
where
it's
we're from? Like,
100%.
is it, or do we
It's our
just float
home.
around in space?
No, it's our home. I
Hmm.
felt completely at peace in this existence. It was not here.
Hmm.
Sometimes I feel like I'm watching from the sidelines when I'm here. I don't feel fully present anymore. And I
Hmm.
yearn for that
Actually,
feeling
I feel
again
that way
being there.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, you get it because you've had
Hmm.
an NDE. Like it's almost
Yeah,
like you've got one foot here and one foot there, and you're never fully on either side. And it's disconcerting
hmm,
sometimes. That I just feel I have to make the best of it.
very.
And I again was never going to talk about this. I was never going to write a book. That came together really weirdly. I've been told for years you have to write a book on your medical experience, even. But the healing that was so miraculous. And I thought, no, I like my quiet life. I don't want to be I'm shy. I don't want to be out in public talking.
Mm.
And then a friend asked if I would write the book. And I thought, okay, I can write the book. I love to write. I'm never going to publish it, but at least my kids can understand where they came from and my family can
Right.
see the good parts of it.
Mhm.
Maybe it can help them heal. And it took
Mhm.
about a year and a half to write it. I had to do a year of EMDR therapy before I could even write, like
Oh,
weekly
yeah,
therapy.
yeah.
I had so much trauma from that nurse, first off,
I bet
but it
you
was a
did.
lot.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
yeah, even the smell of that the alcohol swabs they put on the central lines and the PICC lines
Mm.
made me nauseous. The beeping noises, it was a lot. So I did therapy for that before I even started writing the book. And then when I requested my medical records, that kind of sent me to a dark place. They were pretty scary,
Oh,
but I'm very
you're a very
thankful.
brave woman.
Yeah, it was weird.
You
I
are.
felt driven, like, you have to write
Yeah.
this. And as I'd finished parts of it, I think I need an editor. And just the way it was coming into to me, like the people I needed were just there when I needed them. And the cover designer, and I have an amazing team that I worked with. It was just, I mean, I go hiking with one of my editors like once a week now. We've become really good friends.
Wow.
So it was definitely meant to be written. And I've had some amazing people reach out that I won't share their stories, but they needed that message. And so for me, that makes it worth it.
You have changed many people's lives
But they changed mine too.
at
Like
the
it's,
sacrifice of your own pain and suffering. That's a real gift that you have.
but I'm grateful now for it. I mean, if I'm really sick with an
Yeah.
obstruction or something, I think, why did you do this to me? But
Of course.
you're in pain, help me. But no, I fully understand. And again, it took me like 23 years to really unpack all of everything from it.
Mhm.
It was a lot. And I
Ah,
would talk to people about, if someone was passing away, I'd say, you don't need to be scared. We kind of have little conversations about why, but never
yeah.
fully. But I think people are more awake now and they are yearning for
Oh,
that
yeah.
sense of love and purpose and understanding. And so I think there are so many stories that have not been told. I've talked to people that are like, oh, mine happened 40 years ago. I'm just barely talking about it. And so there are stories that we have not heard yet. And I tell everyone, share your story, even if it's just with one person that needs to hear it. You never know
Yeah.
who's going to need to hear
Mhm.
it. So I'm glad that there's podcasts like yours that can
Oh,
get that love where it needs to
oh,
be.
absolutely, because that's how I got through mine
Yeah.
was the podcasts, right?
Yes.
Because at the time, like, honestly, I mean, you can't just tell someone, well, you can,
Yeah.
but you're deemed, well, you were at that time, were deemed like woo-woo or
Hmm.
crazy or,
Hmm.
all sorts of ridiculed names. But so you just learn to kind of keep it to yourself. So it was being able to, thank gosh, we had the internet though, so we could delve into YouTube and find what we could find. But some of the people um that had NDEs a long time ago when there was no internet had a really tough time because there was
I did.
barely any even books
Yeah.
about it, right? Like, could you imagine? We're kind of fortunate. You had a very in-depth NDE. And
Yes.
having said that, why do you think?
I don't
Why
know.
you, do you think?
I wonder about that all the time. And I was talking to a
Uh-huh.
mother whose daughter passed away that had something similar to mine, my health
Uh-huh.
problems. And she said, why did you live and not my daughter? And I said, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I'm so sorry for your loss. And she said, I miss her every day. And it
Oh,
doesn't seem fair to me that you're here and she's not. And I didn't take it personal because she was in such grief over losing her baby. I don't know why I was given this experience. I'm very, very thankful that I was given it because if I would have just had the medical part of my experience and no ability to feel that love from the other side, I would not have survived. I can guarantee you right now I would have died. The amount of complications I had were so severe. I mean, I when I got my medical records, I was looking at the diagnoses and Googling them, and I was like, oh no, that's some really scary stuff. Like it was
yeah.
it was pretty critical. And so to me it was a gift. And I think there are a lot more people that have NDEs that don't know they did. Because my book
Yeah.
came out and lady was saying, oh, yeah, that happened to me when I had my baby. I left my body and watched my body bleed out on the table when they delivered the baby.
Mhm.
I just never thought about it. So it's happening more than we think it is, I think. Uh,
So for someone that's had such an in-depth NDE like yours, do you think that maybe it was so you could share it with everyone?
I do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been kind of scary to put myself out there. And I do like my quiet little life, and all of a sudden, I'm on all these podcasts, and it's it's scary to me in a way. But I
It is
also,
to me too a bit.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I had to kind of put that aside and say, "Okay, God, do you want your message out there?" And that message is
Yeah.
that we are loved
Mhm.
and that we do
Yeah.
not need to fear death. And that's, to me, the most important things. And so
Ooh, you just
I
gave
had to
me the
kind of put
shivers.
my yeah, I had to put my scary points aside and think it's not about you. You have this ability to help somebody,
Yeah,
and it needs to be done.
that's right.
So, and I've made such amazing friendships through this that I wouldn't
Mhm.
have met these people otherwise. So that's my gift,
Right?
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. And it's
Yeah.
such a sense of belonging when you meet
Mhm.
someone.
Yeah.
Being alone for many years, um, I'm not sure if you went through that. I kind of went through that. So, and then finally meeting people like yourself, it kind of feels like you're finding your people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
different
it's
kind of
really
frequency.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like it was supposed like I don't know how to explain it, but it feels good.
Yeah.
It
I
feels
told
good.
my ex-husband at one point about that. I'm like, if we hadn't have gotten
Yeah.
divorced, we did divorce after. I said, if we hadn't got divorced, I wouldn't have met these friends I needed in my life, my village. And so I said, thank you for,
Yes.
being part of my past.
Mm,
I guess right now, but these people were supposed to come into my life, and I wouldn't have met them if I would have stayed in my marriage. And so I think that there's a bigger hand involved in our life than we will ever know. I think we
yeah,
make our choices for almost like life contracts before we come here. And
I think so too. I was
yeah,
just gonna ask you that.
yeah, you'll meet someone in this
Mhm.
life and think, I know you. Um, you feel very familiar to me. And I think there's a reason why they feel familiar. They've been with us before.
Yeah. This isn't our first time.
No. I mean, look
Yeah.
at our conversation for 2 hours when we first talked.
Yeah. Oh, I know, I loved it so much. I'm like,
It's
"Okay,
so
you're my
fun.
new bestie."
Right, exactly.
And I
Exactly.
can't wait to meet you in person, honestly. I'm just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is gonna be great. This is
I
gonna be
know. I
so
am so
great."
excited. Yeah.
Yeah, this really excites me, and as much as it probably excites you as well, this is my first belonging feeling. So it feels quite good. And so I get to run around with this buzzing high vibe all day. It's such a great feeling.
Yeah, it is, huh?
It's just like, oh, I can't even imagine if I was around like 150,000 people that have all been to the other side. I couldn't even imagine what that would feel like.
If they ran the world, there wouldn't be any war. There wouldn't be any hate.
Right?
Oh my gosh, it would
Yeah.
be a
Oh
completely
my.
different existence than what we have. It's
You
incredible.
know, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish. Do you think that every time you were going to the other side and being in the water, that was healing you?
Mhm. I
Me
do.
too.
And I
That's what
still
I thought too.
love water to this
Yeah.
day. I live in the mountains, and so there's lakes everywhere, and I will just literally get on my paddleboard and just lay and put my hands in the water and just float around the river or the lake. I love water.
Mm.
It's so healing, and I hike a lot. I'm always in nature because that's when I feel closest. I came back and I left the organized religion, and I just
Oh,
find my peace in nature now. It's where I feel
nature's your
closest to the
religion,
sun. Yeah. Yeah, it's where I
right?
feel I'm closest to where I was. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
You miss it there.
Yeah.
Or maybe you miss the love.
To me, it's like if you go you have a home and then you move across the country and you have a new
Mhm.
home, but you still miss your old home. And you
Okay.
miss
Yeah.
the people there and the friendships and the connections and the routines. You still like your new home, but you still feel homesick sometimes. That's what it's like to me.
Well, we'll be back there soon enough, won't we?
Yeah.
What do you like? Actually, I'm not going to say that, but okay. So, as I was listening to your story, I noticed a theme through the story. And I'm not sure if I'm correct on this, but I want to tell you it because I just noticed and I have it in big letters that I can read without my glasses. So as you were going through your story, I got the feeling that, well, and you said it many times, you didn't want to be here anymore because you were tired and you were
Yeah,
done,
I
right?
was. Yeah,
Um, but every single time that happened to you, the other side showed you something so soft, so
yeah,
tender, and
yeah,
so beautiful and so worth living for,
yeah. They did.
didn't it?
There was
That's what I found.
so many experiences. Like even little
Yeah.
simple things. Like one day, my dad was with me, and I was walking the hall, because I had to get my steps in. And there was a patient that spoke Spanish, and the nurses didn't. And I could speak Spanish pretty fluently at that point. And so I was able to stop and translate for this patient so they didn't feel so scared and understand what, was
Hmm.
happening. So there were little nuggets of, I call them Easter eggs, little nuggets
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
special moments. And that was one of
Hmm.
them, just connecting with other patients. I had, when I first got into the hospital, there was a patient there that he had the same surgery I had, and he was pretty unhealthy as well. And I had a nurse that was showing me how to use the colostomy, like how to take care of the colostomy bag. And one day she told me about him, but she brought him into my room to meet me. And at that point, before I'd met him, I was so alone. I thought I have this bag attached to me that I have my waist in. I'm just a gross person. I had no
Oh.
self-esteem from it. I felt so gross. And this man comes in and he tells me about his family and we chat. And I didn't feel alone after that. Like there was someone out there that understood what I was going through. So yeah, there were definitely little like, you know, um, sprinkles of love that were throughout the
There was.
experience for me. Yeah.
I noticed that even when the children came,
Yeah.
like they came and they kept coming, and it almost signified to me, um, love.
Yeah. And they never said anything. It's
Yeah.
almost like they were just
And it,
watching over me.
yeah. And then,
Mm.
but then that would take away your thoughts of not wanting to be here
Yeah. I was very
anymore.
confused who they were. I wanted to
Yeah.
know who they were. And I don't know why I didn't just ask them. Maybe they couldn't tell me. I don't know. But yeah, it took my mind off things because I was so wondering who they were and my family too. I mean, I was telling my family stuff constantly. Like one time I told them that Jesus was in the window just watching me. And
Yeah.
my mom actually thought was coming to take me home, like I was dying. That really, really freaked her out. But for me, it was just a simple, I see you and I know you and I love you. And that's why he was there. There was nothing more to it than that. Just so I was not alone. So it was,
We're never
traumatizing for
alone,
them.
are we?
And my family wasn't alone either. When they were getting
Yeah.
ready to intubate me, my dad was in the room at one point and he heard someone say his name. And my nurses were new to the team. They were critical care nurses. They didn't know him. They didn't know his name. But he was standing there watching me. He heard someone say Craig and he looked around and he said, yes. It was a female voice. And then he realized that it wasn't anyone in the room. And he said, he wrote in his journal, it was no one of this earth, basically. Like they weren't of this life or something to that effect.
Wow.
So my family was
Wow.
getting little moments of things happening that was sustaining them. They had the strength. And even like my mom, her job was nearby so she could leave when she needed to. And she had the support from her coworkers to be able to be available, but to also do her job. So they weren't alone either. And so that was good for
This
them.
life is amazing.
Yeah, it
When
is.
you stop and listen to your story and look back, isn't it amazing?
It is. And I think it's a hard life though. Like most people have
Yeah.
a really hard life here. And sometimes we dwell on
Hmm.
the hard. And I've done the same thing. Like if I'm having a bowel
I know.
obstruction and I'm puking for
Absolutely.
17 hours, I'm not
Hmm.
happy. You know? But
I wouldn't be either.
no, it's
Of
horrible.
course not.
Take me
Yeah.
away. But I think sometimes we do focus on the negative. And so what I do now, and I have for a long time, is every day I say what I'm grateful for, as many things as I can. And some days it's been a hard day and I think I'm grateful that I can lay down in my bed and go to sleep. That's all I'm grateful for. But it is something.
Right?
And so I think we need to find something every day. And I think it raises the frequency of love in this world if we're doing acts of service for others and not dwelling on our
Yep.
own problems.
Uh-huh.
So I always try to find ways to help, even if it's just holding a door open for someone that has a small child in their hands or they're elderly or anything that you can to help others. It helps bring more love into this world.
Absolutely. And I was thinking just when you said that, that every single time you share this story and the ripple effect that this story probably causes
It's been
helps
amazing.
I got goosebumps saying that because that's what it does.
Yeah.
It will send ripples out like crazy to people every time you even speak about your story or someone reads your book.
And I
How
almost feel
beautiful.
unworthy in a way. Like I don't feel, I don't know. It's just hard to say. I feel like it should be someone that's, had all this experience that, all these degrees and
Uh-uh.
stuff. But no, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I've accepted that there is a reason for it. And it really is amazing. I mean,
And you're just the perfect person for it because you had the strength, the sass, and just you did. Yeah, that's just who you were. They knew you were perfect. You're perfect.
and I'm sure my guide is
Just
like, she's kind of
perfect.
wacky sometimes.
Oh, probably. I'm sure they all look down on us and go, "Oh my God, what did I sign up for here? What the heck?"
I've got the zany one. Okay. We'll take one for the team.
This one thinks she's like, "Oh yeah, I could just imagine. I could just only imagine. It must be fun sometimes, though. It
It
must
is.
be
And
fun."
I still hear his, he's still around me. And even the way it came that I started talking about this, like,
Hmm.
the first time I ever talked about it in public was last November of 2024. And about the summer of that year, 24, I started hearing him say, "You're going to talk in November at IANS." And I was like, "Shut up. Shut your mouth, guy." No, no. And I kept hearing it over and over again. And I'm thinking, there is no way I'm talking in public about this. Like, you can just shut your mouth right now. And yeah, I got a call from the person that's in charge of the Utahans, and he said, "Can you talk in November?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I guess." Supposed to talk about it. And it just kind of snowballed from there. But
I'm so
yeah,
happy you did.
I am happy I went out of my little cocoon of safety and did, because it was scary at first. My legs were shaking so bad that first time. And one of the side effects of all this medical stuff is my eyes are terrible. I'm like pretty much blind half the time. And so I couldn't read my notes or anything. And I'm thinking I've
Oh
never
my
talked about this
goodness.
in public. It was really scary. But the people that came up afterwards and told me their experiences and stuff, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's been a beautiful adventure. I really am so happy for it. And IANS is just an amazing
Heather,
organization.
wow.
Mhm.
You are one of the kindest people and purest people I think I've ever met. And I'm telling you the truth when I say that. You just have such a beautiful energy about you.
I think it's that
Really
love from the
do.
other side, yeah. And whenever I talk about it, I feel that love again. So it makes it worth it. I'd, I'd rather do this
Yeah.
every day for the rest of my life than not, because it brings the people into my life that are meant to be there.
Oh,
Yeah. And they're
oh
giving
my
me that
heart.
energy. Yeah. Yeah.
Give
It's
me the
just,
goosebumps everywhere.
yeah, right? I If you
Mhm.
would have asked me 2 years ago where my life was heading, I never would have said this. I never thought I would have published a book or any of this. I'm on the board of directors for Utah Ions chapter.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's
That's
amazing.
so cool.
Yeah, it's so fun to meet these people that understand you. It's almost like you can talk without talking. You're communicating with just your energy, and yeah, so beautiful.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
What I just wanted to go back for 1 second before I get off topic again because I'm really good for that. You said that you seen God and he was in human form?
Yeah, it was the way I saw him was he looked human, but I also felt like he was very ancient and that he was coming
Mhm.
to me in that form so I would understand who he was and know him. But I don't feel like that's how he always looks. And whenever I've listened to other NDEs, I always listen to see how they explain him. I just
Mhm.
think he came the way I needed to see him, and that's not how he always looks. It was for my benefit. But his energy is what I noticed. I could have had my eyes closed and I would have known who he was.
You know, that takes me to my next. because my next thought actually, because I had this thought many times. I've just never asked anyone, but many people will see someone. And I'm wondering, just in your own opinion, do you think that God, source, whoever anybody wants to call it, might be able to disguise himself and show up for
Yeah.
certain people because he knows them and he knows how they're going to react, and maybe he wants to keep people calm in a situation?
I
Do
think
you
God
think that
is,
he can do
yeah.
that?
Source is everything. He's every
Yeah.
raindrop, every rainbow.
Mhm.
He is the all. I mean, he's source, really. And
Mhm.
so the abilities he has are just monumental. Nothing is
Mhm.
impossible. And it's funny to me because if I hadn't had this experience, I would be atheist. I was raised in a very strict religious home and I didn't conform. Probably because I'm, my twisted, sarcastic self.
Yeah.
I hated the confines of religion and I pushed back against it. I never rebelled in a bad way, but I didn't feel comfortable there. And now I could never ever deny that God exists. And
Exactly.
so when people say God doesn't exist, I think, oh, this is so sad. And I never try to like force people to see my way, but I'll just say, this is what I saw. I hope that someday you feel that love or understand that too. Because it makes me sad. And I have a friend that's very, very atheist and doesn't believe in God, but we have these cool conversations and I'm never going to force him to see it my way. But yeah, I can never, ever deny what I saw and I would never want to. It's
Yeah, I feel the
changed my
same.
thought process completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And and everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, it will be changed,
Yeah, we're
right? In
always
all good.
growing and learning.
Yep,
Mm.
always.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Heather, is a signature question that I've just started. You're my very first, because what would the Returned podcast be without a signature question that speaks to the heart of the podcast, right?
Let's do
I'm thinking
it.
I want to have a question. So I want one that I thought of this and I wanted one that honored why you came back and then also honored what you brought back with you, basically. So the question is, every soul who returns brings back a truth. What truth did you return with?
That we are all universally loved, no matter what. Nothing we do can make us unloved by God, and we do not need to fear death. You're just walking again from one door to the next. But the love is so intense and there's no judgment. We're just fully loved.
Beautiful. For all of those, Heather, watching or listening who feel drawn to your story and your work, do you have any offering, services, or published works that you could share with the audience?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's heathervandermeden.com. And
Mhm.
there's quite a few podcasts on there. And there's also a link. My book is on Amazon and then it's online with every retailer, Barnes Noble, Target, Walmart, all that. And it talks about my experience, my healing, but also talks about some other things too. And it does have
Okay.
my sense of humor. So it's not like a depressing, oh my gosh, I died again
Mhm.
type thing. It was fun to write. But there is a contact button. And so if people do reach out, I always try to respond. And again, some really fun conversations have happened with strangers that are now friends. So,
Oh, that's
mm,
wonderful. Heather, I cannot thank you enough. I really can't. It has been such a pleasure finally meeting you in person. Well, I guess kind of in person, but
yeah.
finally meeting you and listening to your story and really feeling your energy. Um, you sharing your profound journey with us today is such a gift. Your strength, your clarity, your willingness to revisit these experiences so others can actually find comfort, healing, understanding is truly another gift.
Yeah. But it's a gift to me too.
I am right. I am so, so very grateful that you chose to share here on The Returned. And I want to thank you for that very
Thank
much.
you. I am so glad we could meet.
Me too. What am I doing? I'm getting all excited in my head. And
I'm like my
to
new
the
Canadian best
audience,
friend.
right? Exactly. I can't wait till we can hang out one day.
I know.
And to the audience, may this story be a gentle reminder that everything ending in fear may be the beginning of something you've been waiting for without even knowing. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.